Hey, good evening, everyone. Good evening. Rebecca Johns coming to you live this Thursday evening, July 20th, 2023. I pray that you are blessed wherever you are and whatever you're doing this evening. I am coming to you live on multiple platforms. We've got 4 of our pages and groups actually over on Facebook that are supporting this message tonight. We've got my personal page, of course. You might be seeing me on my personal page over on Facebook. Hey, y'all, good to see you. You might be over on the Heaven on Earth Ministries page for our nonprofit organization over on Facebook, or maybe even the Godly Woman Facebook page. Good to see you if you're coming in from that place. And of course, our group page on Facebook is called Activating Your Great I Am. Grateful to over 1,400 people who make that a community over on Facebook. Good evening if you're watching me on LinkedIn, YouTube, Twitch, or Twitter. My name is Rebecca Johns. I'm a certified holistic health practitioner, purpose coach, and ordained minister of the gospel. And I'm talking to you tonight about your spiritual power as a birthright. Your spiritual power as a birthright. If you're tuning in, maybe even for the first time, drop a note in the chat. Let me know where you are tuning in from. What platform, what area. Good to see you, Christina. Good to see you, Chisler. Birthright, by definition, a particular right of possession or privilege one has from birth, especially as an eldest child. Birthright, by definition, is a particular right of possession or privilege one has from birth. I'd like to talk to you about both the privilege, a particular right of possession that is the privilege, and that is your spiritual power. You know, religions all around the world are fascinated. People around the world who've constructed religions are fascinated by the relationship between this human animal, this element of flesh, and the source of power by which it is animated. Millennia of human beings have pursued and been curious and sought truth and awareness of where it is we come from, what it is that's empowering us and animating these skin sacks to live in this world, and where do we go after? And the truth is, I don't know that any one of us can answer that question. The truth is, to each man his own salvation is worked out. You have to answer those tough questions, those esoteric questions. You've got to find the meaning of life, if you will, each of us for ourselves. However, this much I will say I have to insist on, and that is the spirit, the energy, the power afforded to any human being who's ever been alive is afforded from before they're born. You are filled with a breath of life. There is something animating those little cells that become you. There is something behind that. It's that same thing that leaves when you're done. And just for the sake of argument, for the sake of can we please just have a conversation that moves forward and doesn't split hairs, I want to call that spirit. This element of life, this life-giving element, the supernature to this nature, empowers us as a birthright. We possess it. We contain it. We hold it. And that is the privilege. And that is the privilege. What a privilege to be the possessor of a part and particle of the great cosmos spirit, that human beings have thought themselves arrogant and knowledgeable enough to be able to give it a name and contain it and create structure to it. That's why I say tonight in the header, our title for our conversation this evening, spiritual power is a birthright. Caution religions that tell you otherwise. There are people out there promoting that you're not a descendant, a creation, a child of Creator, unless you follow a particular denomination or particular dogma. Then what made me? What breathed life into me? And what was breathing life into people for millennia before that denomination existed? Make it make sense, friends. We got to make it make sense. I find it ironic that religious and spiritual types are so turned off by those who are not so prone to religion and spirituality. So shocking, so appalled. But some people aren't called to focus on whence they've come or to where they'll go, but simply in this time that they have to honor it and hold it precious, of their own and of others. What greater respect can there be unto life? And so they may be a theist, meaning without the necessity for, desire for, yearning for God, God language, God relationship, God talk. Okay. But they are walking around animated with the breath of life, just like anyone else. Spirit is not religion. The essence of the self-existent one. And I'm not talking about some super somebody somewhere. I'm not talking about an invisible man in the clouds. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the frequency, the essence that holds stars in place, that holds oceans at bay from consuming the land, that allows birds to fly and humans to walk. What is it that makes the grass grow in my yard every year? What is that life force? What is that energy by which all of this scene is held together and without which it would fall apart? And who are we to insist that we know any more than our little localized perspective, community, culture, tradition, awareness, mindset has informed us? And at what point will we allow each other the freedom to express and explore that creator energy spirit on our own individual terms without being offended? At what point do I let you be free to be you? At what point am I an encourager that other human beings around me, starting in my own home, are activated and empowered in their birthright? Their birthright. In my opinion, that's slavery. Whether you're leading a religion that presses dogma or you're a constrictive parent that disallows the true freedom and growth of your child and their own individual life call. It's slavery. It's bondage. And I caution you what you have made your God and what you have deified. And if that's really giving you power. Many of us have not been nurtured in environments that allow us. What's the definition? A particular right of possession or privilege one has from birth, especially as an eldest child, which is so compelling because in the Eastern Aramaic translation of John 3:16, it does not say God sent his only begotten son. It says he sent his Yechidaya, which is his firstborn, the eldest. And that's crucial, a crucial detail in the East, because especially the firstborn is going to be the holder of a particular right of possession or a right of privilege. And why did that matter in that Eastern context of Jesus the Christ? Because then anyone who believes and follows the teachings of Jesus then will inherit equal to the firstborn. So there's no special inheritance for the first. The point of John 3:16 is that any human being that's ever been alive, that is alive, and that will ever be alive, that by simply following these simple teachings of Jesus of Nazareth, they would live a life where death doesn't happen, everlasting life. That's a good life. That means you live a good life. That's an idiom. And so your birthright then, the particular right of possession and privilege that you've had since birth, is meant to be utilized. It's meant to empower you as a creator. And yet many of us have relinquished our birthright. We have not redeemed the voucher for that power. And it is a power. It's a mental power. It's an emotional power. It is a physical, physiological power. And it is a soul power, an essence, an essential power. It is physical and metaphysical, this power. And many of us have been part of religions, families, cultures, communities that build and nurture and grow their humans against the grain of their own birthright. And then we wonder why there's so much chaos and turbulence in our own homes, in our marriages, with our children, in ourselves, with our health, with our sex, with our money, with our careers. The disturbance in the force is that we live against the soul and the truth of the soul. We've come to adhere to what is synthetic and inauthentic, what is man-made. We're agreeing to man-made rules, shoulds and shouldas. Well, first you should do this, and then 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 you should do this. And when you've done that, you're a good person and you're successful. Okay, so everybody? So everybody's the hand. Right? When I cook, I prepare food differently. Right? Eggs are prepared differently than potatoes, that are prepared differently than Brussels sprouts, that are prepared differently than Thanksgiving turkey. Each thing needs to be tended to for what it is. The way it is brought to be, the way it is prepared, the way it is served. If you're a farmer, you do not plant and farm apple seeds to be apple trees the same way you farm grapes, the same way you farm corn. Those are different methods, techniques, applications, processes. And the same thing for each and every human being. We're individually apart, but also whole and complete as a piece, right? Think like a puzzle. Each piece, it really is complete. And it's just a piece of the whole, but that piece is everything it is and everything it ever needs to be. It's not misshapen. It's perfectly shaped for the piece that it is meant to occupy space as. And many of us are deforming and morphing and getting a Sharpie and coloring over and then scissoring and then nail filing and then sanding. And we're at work at this puzzle piece because we're looking around, comparing, contrasting, and competing as opposed to communing and creating from that space of communion. And religions, unfortunately, have perpetuated living against spiritual birthright. I know. You might say, how, Rebecca, are you possibly going to say that religions, which are supposed to be hubs and stations and households and teams for spiritual things, how can religion work against spiritual birthrights? Because religions are formulated with chains of command and standard operating procedures that belong to people. People established that. Listen, I'm the head of a ministry. I've established standard operating procedure. It's different than what your spiritual or religious organization might employ for itself. In my organization, no one has to call me reverend or pastor, and in my organization, no one has to kiss my ring. Those are two things I've seen in other organizations that call themselves spiritual or religious entities, because those are man-made. Those are local, regional, ethnic, cultural, socio-established practices, beliefs, customs, and that's fine. I actually encourage that. I think that if we were granted more space to enjoy that part of ourselves, that we wouldn't have to fret over so much of what we fret over. I saw a post in a group this week that asked if someone who was Eastern Orthodox could marry someone who was something else Orthodox. And I thought, what have we done? What have we done? One of my favorite families that I knew growing up, the father was Italian and Irish Catholic, and the mother was atheist. And I learned a lot about how to make people who you love matter and give room to them to follow the call of their own hearts. Question on Twitch. Thank you, by the way, for tuning in. And the question is, what do you think about Islam? So First of all, that's such a gigantically generic, broad stroke when we say just Islam. My father taught me, he was from the East, and I'm first generation born from his side of the family and in America. And he used to tell me, he said, Brati, my daughter, back home, Le amrakhwa mushrimane. We wouldn't say Muslims or Islamic or these words that we use in the West. I said, then what would you say? He said, we would say Muhammadin. Ani iwa Muhammadin. They were Muhammadians. U akhnan iwa mshichaye. And we were the Messiah followers. So the Muhammad followers and the Messiah followers. But there wasn't a question about the God. There's one. And so I believe that we're all ultimately coming from one source of life. There's one breath. There's one who gives life. There's one who weaves us together in our mother's wombs. As far as I'm concerned, there's one, the self-existent one, without which we could not exist. Now, different cultures have established different relationships that they have, different beliefs that they have about that creator. Islam is one route people can take, but that one route has 1,000 routes. It's like Christianity. It's like if you say, what do you think about Christianity? That's a loaded question because there's 40,000 denominations in Christianity. And so which part are we talking about? There are people that practice inside of Islam that are some of the most beautiful people I've ever met. I sat years ago with a sheikh. He said to me, my sister Rebecca, in our faith, we believe that in life you should hold on to things very lightly, because when Allah comes to take or give, you will give and take freely and peacefully with him. But if you are attached to things in life and you insist and hang on, then you will be wrestling with the hand of Allah itself. Well, listen, whether you call God Allah or Krishna or... that's a good lesson. That's a good message. And there he was, a sheikh of Islam, teaching me, a prophetic Christian following, Jesus teaching following Assyrian woman, a core principle to walk better in my spiritual birthright. And had I closed my eyes and ears to him simply because he was part of Islam and I was not, I would have missed out on a very important and valuable lesson. And so I have respect, and what I wish is that the world would also have respect for itself and each other. I don't think we have to adopt all of each other's ways, but I think that we can find common ground. I can find principles in Islam that are principles in Christianity, that are principles in Wicca, that are principles in Hinduism, that are principles in Buddhism. Because truth is truth is truth is truth. And a rose by any name is still a rose. I pray that answered your question, and I'm happy to answer more if you'd like more clarification. Do you have questions for me? I'm happy to answer them. Please go ahead and drop them in the chat. If you are someone who would like to ever come in and speak with me on camera, you are able to do that. You can step into the studio. I've just got to learn a little bit more about my studio. But if you're someone who would ever like to be a guest and have direct conversation with me, please email me at rebecca@livinggodspromises.com, and I'd be happy to connect with you and work that out. Do you have any questions for me in particular about spirituality, religion, faith, or anything related to how possibly we might even function in a world coexisting? You know, it's my desire to not have to have a banana be a pineapple, or a pineapple be a tomato, or a tomato be an onion. I like all of them. Why do we have to choose? Why can we not appreciate one for what it is and another for what it is? Islam is not supposed to be Christianity. Christianity is not supposed to be Hinduism. Hinduism isn't supposed to be Wicca. Wicca isn't supposed to be Catholicism. Catholicism isn't supposed to be atheism. I know that can be confronting. I know the thoughts of fear that can flood the minds of human beings. I understand. But at what point are we willing to truly allow people to be who they are, ourselves to be who we are, and allow good in the world to come from it? I don't think there is evil in the world because of this direct evil. I think the evil is being done in the world because we have prohibited human being in their true expression of themselves. And when you prohibit people from expressing themselves, people who are creators, people who are spirit-filled, then you start to cause a rebellion inside of human beings. So I better understand, you are saying that all religions point to the same God? I don't know that I would say religions point to the same God, because religions are like their own brand, right? Religions point to themselves. At Lowe's, you get products from Lowe's. At Home Depot, they're talking about Home Depot. So religions point to themselves and what their doctrine is meant to illustrate. And therefore, God is portrayed through that lens. What I would say is that I believe the truth is that these skin sacks will all go back to the earth and be compost. And the breath that I have is no different than the breath that you have. And that when breath leaves my body, it will go back to breath. Spirit goes back to spirit, and dirt goes back to dirt. And I don't think that it matters what religion you practice in the middle. I think that your soul still goes back to the one that made it, and the flesh goes back to the earth. Dominion and domains go back to where they belong. You mentioned focusing on the three gospels. What about other gospels left out? Why didn't Dr. Lamsa include those, i.e. the Gospel of Thomas? So the first part of that, William, thank you for your question over on YouTube, is that I mentioned focusing on three gospels, those being Matthew, Mark, and John, because those were the three gospels written by people who walked with Jesus of Nazareth. So their accounts, if you will, as directly as one could make it possibly direct, that would be there. Luke, the fourth gospel, did not walk with Jesus of Nazareth. He was a little bit later and walked as a contemporary of Saul or Paul. and writer of Acts. Luke also wrote Acts. Regarding things that were left out of the Bible, like the Gospel of Thomas, Dr. Lemso was not making an effort to go beyond what has been authoritatively agreed upon as being the books of the Bible. So he was working to take the Bible that has existed as Old and New Testament agreeably and translate that from the Peshitta Aramaic directly to English. There were also some changes that he wasn't allowed to make. I mean, this is a publishing that happened in the 1950s, and he was working on that manuscript in the early 1900s and 20s and 30s. So publishers in the West, it was I'm amazed honestly that we got what we got. Because little brown man from the East talking about I speak Aramaic and let me tell you what it says was like Lewis and Clark, right? Like, who were the brothers the Wright brothers with the creation of airplanes and people taking flight. Dr. George Lemso was revolutionary like that. People were shocked to understand that Aramaic wasn't a dead language and that Assyrians really still existed. So his focus was taking the text that existed that people were reading as their everyday Bible and making that accurate in translation. Once he spent 30 years making it a translation that was accurate, he then spent 20 years writing commentaries that would help any reader more substantiatively understand the text, because there's understanding the translation of if part your hand sins offends you, cut it off. Okay, that's an exact translation, but is that what it means? Right? And so that idiomatic speech, the psychology of the culture, the mysticism, the beliefs, that background stuff that really influences that context, that influences content, is what those commentaries were about. And he wrote 3 of them: the Old Testament, the Gospel, and the New Testament commentaries. And those are the books now that expand over a 12 volume series that Dr. Rocco Errico and Dr. Lemsa continued to work on together. And that, of course, Dr. Lemsa passed in the 70s. And since then, Dr. Errico has fulfilled that project and commission with Dr. Lemsa's heart and mind. And that complete series is available on Nura.com. Let me just show you a couple of things. So when speaking about these particular books that William is referring to, what we're talking about is the Peshitta translation of the Bible, Dr. George M. Lemsa's translation. You'll see some really cool examples in this book too. And he tells you where the manuscripts are that he took from. I mean, he wasn't sitting in his basement with copies of things that he decided. He was in the museums and read from the museums that hold the manuscripts that scholars agree are the oldest manuscripts of the Bible. And he took it from the Aramaic into the English. And what people will try to insist on is the King James Version in the West, but the King James Version carries a lot of not just mistranslations, but misinterpretation. And Dr. George Lemsa shows us how. He shows us the original text, what the words mean, and exactly how they could have been misunderstood. So the Bible is that translation, that accurate translation. But As a favor to readers, he created some other tools. Okay. And so one of those is Idioms in the Bible Explained. I want to find a good one. Evil beasts with slow bellies. Titus 1:12. This was an idiom for vicious men hungry for power. Hellfire. Hellfire was an idiom. Heaven. Heaven is an idiom. Parables and sayings of Jesus, references to Satan, idioms. Dr. Eriko wrote a book called Let There Be Light. And Let There Be Light, I think, before anyone gets into the Bible and even those idioms books, I think you should read Let There Be Light. I'm teaching on this book starting the 30th of this month at 2 p.m. Eastern. If you go to livinggodspromises.com, you can register. This is the 7 keys. This is the Aramaic language, the idioms, mysticism, culture, psychology, symbolism, and amplification. Let There Be Light, the 7 keys. It is a 7-week study. You have to buy the book, and it is $77. livinggodspromises.com. We're going to go into the Aramaic language. We're going to talk about the idioms. We're going to get into the psychology of the East. We're going to talk about the spirituality and mystical nature, what they really believe in the East, why they do what they do. Even today, some of what the West thinks is ancient, it's like this morning for us Easterners. Okay? But I'll be teaching on this, and Dr. Eriko will actually be my guest this Sunday at 4 p.m. For those of you who'd like to drop in, please direct message me, and I'm happy to get you that link. No need to pay unless you'd like to give a love offering to Nura for Dr. Eriko's visit, but he'll be coming in to speak and teach this Sunday at 4 p.m. Some of you may know I was installed on his executive board of directors at Nura Foundation, and I'm honored to be in collaboration with him and Reverend Hanny Freewatt and Lynn, who's there running the business office and on the board. Just a beautiful group of people, and we are really committed to this particular language and teaching being preserved, retained, and multiplying. William, I'm looking forward to having you in Let There Be Light class too. Have you already started to read ahead? Some people come in and they're like, listen, Rebecca, I was just going to read the first chapter and be ready for session 1, but truth is, I'm almost done with it. When does Let There Be Light start? It starts July 30th. That's a Sunday at 2 p.m. Eastern time. July 30th at 2 p.m. Eastern. We do have some partial and full scholarships available, so if finances are an issue, please let me know. Otherwise, it is $77 to register, plus the cost of the book, which is $17.95. You can get that at nura.com or amazon.com. I'll soon have my Amazon, my favorite things in an Amazon store, so you'll be able to get everything in one place from me. This is one of the series of commentaries. I just wanted you to be able to see this kind of book. This is the Aramaic Light, James through Revelation. If you join me next month on Great I Am Radio, Dr. Eriko goes live with me on the air on the 3rd Tuesday. I don't have the date in front of me, and there's so much stuff all over. I don't even have my phone. The third Tuesday of August Dr. Eriko will be on greatimradio.com. We're going to talk about Aramaic light on James through Revelation. This is a commentary based on the Aramaic language of Jesus and ancient Near Eastern customs. This was co-written by Dr. Eriko and Dr. Lemsa. And it goes over the books, James through Revelation. James is one of my favorites. So by all means, I hope you will consider looking into some of these for yourself, and then join us for study. I am in perpetual teaching mode. So there are always classes that you can take. You go to livinggodspromises.com and you will really be blessed with this. Let me just give you an example of why these commentaries are valuable. Let's read Revelations chapter 1, verse 7. Revelation chapter 1, verse 7, that reads, "Behold, he cometh with clouds, and every eye shall see him, and they also which pierced him, and all kindreds of the earth shall wail because of him. Even so, Amen." The phrase "cometh with clouds" or "upon the clouds" is an Aramaic idiom which means to come in great glory and honor. In other words, the person has become successful. In the Near East, when a man has succeeded in a project, people say he is riding on the clouds. For in those days, clouds were the highest that people could see, higher than the highest mountains. The reader must realize that the man Jesus, returning in a mortal body and riding on a cloud, would only be seen in the area close to the cloud. Biblical writers often used the term cloud metaphorically. They do not mean it literally. God is often portrayed as riding on the clouds or as making clouds his chariot, but no cloud can hold God or any human being. Jesus' coming will be spiritual. He will come in a spiritual body, free from all physical limitations and from time and space. Paul wrote to the Corinthians that people die in a corruptible body, but will rise in a spiritual body. Every eye will see him, including those who crucified him, who will lament for their mistakes on the great day of the resurrection, when Jesus' kingdom becomes a reality and evil forces created by human beings are completely subdued. People will think and see spiritually. So this was all metaphoric. Then their minds will open and the Christ will appear to every eye. What is the Christ? In Aramaic, Mashiach, which is the anointed one, which comes from the word mishcha, oil for anointing. So what we're talking about is a time when people will open their eyes and see with their spiritual selves. The anointing of them will see. This will happen only when humans change their hearts and become new creations worthy to be citizens of the everlasting kingdom of justice and goodness. And that goes back to my comment about the spiritual power being a birthright and cautioning us to fall prey to, nay, perpetuate religiosity that teaches protocol over passion, patriarchy over purpose, what we have as an opportunity with our spiritual birthright is to live with a wisdom, love, strength, and peace beyond all earthly understanding. But it will require us to grow. It will require us to mature. It will require us to abandon our immaturity, our toxicity, our repugnant lifestyles, We have really become people who live repugnant lifestyles and then pray and plead with some invisible deity to make it better. No, this invisible deity gave us the power to be creators, conscious, mindful, deliberate, wise, prosperous. And we take all of that power and perpetrate with it. And so there's nothing else to pray for. Everything has been given. Now it's up to us to use it well. And that is the only reason I do what I do, and I teach what I teach, and I offer what I offer, is so that people have access to activating in themselves that great I am, that part and particle of this great, amazing, creative power source, and not walk around as pitiful victims inside of their own creations. Can you imagine Superman sitting around in his Clark Kent suit, pissing and moaning because he couldn't make things different and better? Would you not just want to grab him by the shoulders and shake him crazy? Like, seriously, bro? Get up. Isn't that what Jesus said to the man who sat over and waiting for the angels to come and be in the fountain to make the water holy so that he could get healed? 38 years. 38 years he'd been sitting there. 38 years. I try, but everybody beats me to it. Try as I will, never works out for me. You know what Jesus said to him? Not po thang, not let us pray, not devil be gone. He said, do you want to heal? And the man was like, yes. And you know what Jesus said? Get up. Oh, and take your stuff with you. That wasn't a miracle. He gave him life coaching. Get up. How many of us live in our own stuckness every day? Won't get up, won't move, won't make a change. Some of us physically sedentary, won't move, won't get up. Some of us mentally won't move, won't get up. Some of us emotionally won't move, won't get up. That's not a devil. That's why the master teacher said, do you want to heal? You know, it was really funny. Jesus really didn't have much to interact with when someone sinned. He was like, quit it. Just quit it already. Knock it off. I saw something on Facebook. Oh, I can't believe I didn't preserve it on my screen, because I thought, man, if this isn't about as spiritual as it gets when it comes to helping people heal. Let me see if I can find it. I just sort of chuckled. It was a comment that said most people really need to just get told to knock it off. And that therapists should be the people, counselors should be the people telling their patients and clients, knock it off. The problem is you don't want to upset the people that pay your income. You don't want to say something. You're a pastor letting people get away with nonsense in your congregation because, you don't want to lose that 10% of their paycheck that they tithe. You're a therapist and see patients, but you won't call them out and tell them you're in an abusive relationship. Have you considered leaving it? Do you know that it's an abusive relationship? Do you know you're the abusive one? It's really funny how much we are supposed to buy into a conversation about empowerment, but we won't own our power. Listen, it doesn't matter how much power someone is trying to give you. If you won't own it, it'll never be enough. I don't care how much money I give you. If you don't learn how to handle money, you're not going to ever handle it right. I don't care how much times I call you beautiful. If you don't believe it, you're not going to receive it. Here you go. The best advice anyone can give you for 90% of the problems you bring to a therapist is simply this: get over yourself and stop whining. But most therapists won't say that because their income depends on you not getting over yourself. How much harm are we doing? How much harm are we doing blocking people from their spiritual birthright? Inna nuhurat alma. I am the light of the world. But he said that we're all the descendants of God, nuhurat alma, light of the world. So then why are we talking people into that they're idiots? Why are we calling our children names? Why are we deprecating ourselves? Why? Right, William. Careful, William. You're dating yourself over there. The Bob Newhart skit. Right. Stop it. The opportunity of spirituality is to activate the potentiality of our humanality. And we're missing the potential. And we've got generations of frustrated people who are really cool people. Do y'all know you're really cool people? Y'all are cool people. You're fascinating. You've lived really colorful lives. You've lived to tell about it. You've survived stuff nobody should survive. You smile and light up a room in the face of circumstances and pain in your body and challenges with your family and broken hearts from lovers who've betrayed you. And you show up anyway. What glorious world could we create together? What glorious world could we create together if we allowed ourselves and each other to tap into, to activate, and to create lives from that great I am, that, what was it? Particular right of possession or privilege one has from birth. If I can be of service to you, activating that element of you, please reach out to me, whether it's through our group classes or individual one-on-one sessions. I am here to help you activate your great I am. And it's my privilege to know you, to connect with you, to nurture a world with you where all people get access to their birthright, their spiritual birthright. Rachel Sizemore says, I literally need you on repeat daily. Well, I'm glad you said that. I'm here Sundays at 1 p.m. Eastern Time. And Mondays at noon, we have Missionary Monday. Monday evenings at 9 p.m. These are all Eastern times, by the way. Mondays at 9 p.m., we do Aramaic Light. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursdays, I'm live at 10 a.m. and 10 p.m. with different conversations throughout the week. And listen, some of you, oh yes, Clubhouse Fridays at 11 a.m. Join me there. Some of you know already the level of support, healing, growth, and accountability you need to produce specific measurable results in your life. You know you'll need to work with me directly for. So if you're ready to do that, click the link, livinggodspromises.com, go to the scheduling opportunities, and you can see there are options to meet with me free, a quick meet and greet, and there are 30 and 60-minute coaching and healing sessions. I encourage you to invest time and energy into yourself. Rachel, I know exactly who you are. She's Fire Dancer on TikTok. Y'all should go check her out. Bless you, sister. Let's connect sometime. I would love to meet you. Bless you all. Thanks for spending this Thursday night with me. I will be back on tomorrow morning, 11 a.m. on Clubhouse. If you haven't already, download the app and find me there. Rebecca L. Johns, HHP. Thank you for being with me tonight. Good night. Peace.